The maintenance tunnel beneath Deck 7 was darker than space itself. Nari crawled through the narrow passage, her headlamp cutting through the blackness as she checked the power conduits for the third time that week. The metal was cold against her gloves, and the steady hum of electricity filled her ears like a mechanical heartbeat. Nobody else came down here. The alien crew members found these tunnels too small, too dirty, too beneath their dignity. They preferred their clean control rooms with glowing screens and quantum computers that could solve problems faster than any biological mind could think. But Nari knew every inch of these forgotten spaces. She had been working in them for 2 years now, ever since she joined the crew of the Harmony's Edge as a maintenance technician. The ship was massive, larger than any city Nari had known on Earth. It carried diplomats, scientists, and military officers from 12 different alien species, all heading to the most important political meeting in galactic history. The Galactic Unity Summit would decide the future of trade, warfare, and cooperation between worlds. Every species wanted their voice heard, except humans, of course. Nari finished her inspection and made notes on her data pad. Power levels were normal according to the readings, but something felt wrong. The electrical flow seemed uneven, like a river with rocks beneath the surface creating small whirlpools and eddies. Her instruments could not detect anything unusual, but her instincts told her otherwise. She had learned to trust her instincts during her years working with human technology on Earth. Machines had personalities, patterns, moods that showed up in subtle ways. A slight vibration here, a temperature change there, the way electricity moved through circuits like blood through veins. The aliens called this primitive thinking, but it had saved her from equipment failures more times than she could count. The communicator on her belt buzzed. "Nari, report to Section C7 for cleaning duty," came the voice of Park Ji-won, her supervisor. He was the only other human in the maintenance department, and one of the few people on the ship who treated her like she had a brain. Nari sighed and began crawling back toward the access hatch. Cleaning duty meant the alien crew had made another mess they expected the humans to fix. It was always the same pattern. The sophisticated aliens created problems with their advanced technology, then called in the primitive humans to clean up the results. She emerged from the tunnel into the bright lights of the main corridor. Immediately she could hear voices from the officers' lounge nearby. The door was open, and she could see several alien figures gathered around a large table covered with glowing displays. The quantum probability matrices show 0 chance of system failure during the summit, said a voice she recognized as Dr. Zilandra, the Kapari chief engineer. The Kapari were tall, blue-skinned beings with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like stars. They considered themselves the greatest engineers in the galaxy. "Excellent," replied Captain Thexmore, the ship's Vorthon commander. The Vorthon looked like walking crystals, their bodies made of living mineral that changed color based on their emotions. Right now the captain glowed a satisfied green. "Our technology has never failed us before. These primitive species at the summit will be impressed by our reliability." Ambassador Kretal laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. The Nexari diplomat was a floating jellyfish-like creature surrounded by a shimmering energy field. "Speaking of primitive species, I heard the humans actually requested representation at the summit. Can you imagine? A species that still uses manual controls and relies on biological intuition wanting a seat at the table with civilized races." "Biological intuition?" Dr. Zilandra repeated the words like they tasted bad. "They actually believe their random neural firing patterns can compete with our quantum computational analysis. It would be amusing if it were not so pathetic." Nari felt her face grow hot, but she kept walking. She had heard these conversations many times before. To the aliens, humans were barely worth noticing. They served useful roles as janitors, food, servers, and maintenance workers because they were cheap and expendable, but they were not considered intelligent enough for important decisions. She found Park Ji-won in Section C7, staring at a puddle of strange yellow liquid that had leaked from an alien food preparation unit. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much disappointment. "Another masterpiece of alien engineering," he said when he saw Nari approach. The Axiom food processor exploded during their dinner preparation. Apparently, their quantum taste enhancement system could not handle the complexity of preparing meals for multiple species at once. Nari knelt down and examined the mess. The yellow liquid smelled like burnt electronics, mixed with something that might have been food once. Did they try to fix it themselves first? Of course. 3 different engineering teams spent 4 hours running diagnostics and quantum analysis. Then they gave up and called us to clean up the mess. Jiwan handed her a mop and bucket. Commander Velthar actually said we should be grateful for the opportunity to serve our betters. As Nari began cleaning, she listened to the conversations drifting from nearby rooms. The aliens were discussing the summit, their advanced technologies, and their plans for demonstrating superiority over the primitive species they would meet there. Every few minutes, someone made a joke about human stupidity or biological limitations. The humans still think they can understand complex systems through observation and experience, she heard Dr. Zilandra telling someone. They do not realize that true understanding comes only through mathematical analysis and quantum computation. Their minds are simply too limited to grasp the elegant complexity of advanced technology. I heard one of their maintenance workers actually tried to file a report about power irregularities last week, added another voice. Can you imagine? A biological creature thinking it could detect problems that our advanced sensors cannot measure. Nari stopped mopping. That had been her report. She had spent hours documenting the subtle patterns she had noticed in the power systems, the small fluctuations and timing variations that seemed important. She had submitted it through official channels, hoping someone would take her observations seriously. Apparently, they had just used it as entertainment. She finished cleaning and found Jiwan waiting for her with a concerned expression. You heard them talking about your report, he said. It was not a question. It does not matter, Nari replied, but her voice was tight with controlled anger. They think we are too stupid to understand their perfect technology. Maybe they are right. Or maybe, Jiwan said quietly, looking around to make sure no aliens were listening. They are too arrogant to understand that their perfect technology might not be as perfect as they think. Later that evening, Nari sat in her small quarters, reviewing the data she had collected over the past several weeks. The power fluctuations were getting worse, not better. The patterns were subtle but consistent, like cracks spreading through a wall. Her human instruments could not measure the exact specifications, but her instincts screamed that something was building toward a crisis. She looked at her computer screen, considering whether to file another report. The aliens would probably just laugh again. They had their quantum sensors, their probability calculators, their advanced AI systems that could analyze millions of variables in microseconds. What could a primitive human possibly notice that their technology could not? But the patterns were there. She could feel them in the way the lights flickered during power transfers, in the slight delay when backup systems engaged, in the temperature variations that seemed random but followed a hidden rhythm. Something was wrong with the harmonies. Edge, and nobody with the authority to fix it was listening. Nari saved her data and made her decision. She would keep watching, keep documenting, keep trying to understand what her instincts were telling her. Maybe the aliens were right about human limitations. Maybe her biological intuition was just primitive superstition. But maybe, just maybe, the most advanced species in the galaxy were about to learn that primitive thinking sometimes saw problems that sophisticated technology missed. Outside her window, the stars watched silently as the great ship continued its journey toward the summit, carrying its precious cargo of alien dignitaries and its invisible crew of human workers toward a destiny none of them could imagine. 3 days after Nari filed her second report about power irregularities, the problems began to show themselves in ways even the aliens could not ignore. It started small. The lights in Cargo Bay 5 flickered for exactly 3 seconds during the night shift. The gravity in an unused storage room fluctuated just enough to make a stack of supply boxes float briefly before settling back down. The temperature control in the lower deck corridors cycled between too hot and too cold every 47 minutes. Choi Hana was the first to notice the pattern. She worked as a medical assistant in the ship's clinic, one of only 12 humans, in the medical department. Unlike the alien doctors who relied entirely on scanning equipment and computer diagnostics, Hana still checked patients by hand, feeling for fever or checking pulse rates the old-fashioned way. The alien medical staff thought this was charmingly primitive. "Something is wrong with the environmental controls," Hana told Nari during their lunch break in the small human cafeteria. "The medical bay keeps getting too cold, then too hot." The Nexari doctor blamed it on human error, but I checked the settings myself. They are not changing randomly. Nari looked up from her meal of reconstituted protein paste. The human food was basic compared to the exotic dishes the aliens enjoyed, but it was filling and cheap. "What kind of pattern are you seeing?" "Every 47 minutes, the temperature drops by 3 degrees. Then it rises by 6 degrees over the next 20 minutes before returning to normal. The alien medical computers say everything is functioning correctly, but patients are complaining about being uncomfortable." 47 minutes, Nari repeated, thinking. "That matches some of the power fluctuations I have been tracking. Something in the main power grid is cycling on that timing." Yu Seojin looked up from his own meal. He worked in cargo management, keeping track of the thousands of containers and supplies the ship carried. Like most humans on the ship, he had learned to be invisible around the alien crew members. "I have been seeing strange things too. Yesterday, Container Bay 7 lost artificial gravity for exactly 94 minutes. That is exactly twice your 47-minute cycle." "The alien engineers said it was scheduled maintenance," Hana added. "But there was no maintenance scheduled in that sector." Nari felt the familiar tingle of intuition that told her she was seeing something important. "Have you noticed anything else? Any other systems acting strange?" Seojun nodded slowly. "The cargo scanners in Bay 12 keep giving false readings. They show containers that are not there, or miss containers that are right in front of them. Commander Velthar blamed it on human contamination of the scanning systems, but the humans have not been allowed near those scanners for weeks." After lunch, Nari made her way to the main engineering section. She had never been allowed inside the primary control room where Dr. Zilandra and her team monitored the ship's systems, but she could access the secondary monitoring station through the maintenance tunnels. It was a small room filled with older equipment that the aliens considered obsolete, but it still connected to the main power grid. She spent 2 hours reviewing power distribution logs, temperature records, and system performance data. The patterns were becoming clearer. Every 47 minutes, something in the ship's power grid created a small disruption. The disruption was too small for the main computers to register as a problem, but it was causing cascade effects throughout the ship's systems. The door to the monitoring room opened, and Park Ji-won entered carrying a datapad and looking worried. "I just came from a meeting with the department heads," he said. "The aliens are starting to notice the problems, but they think someone is sabotaging the ship." "Sabotage?" Nari looked up from her screens. "What do you mean?" "Commander Velthar believes someone is deliberately causing system failures to disrupt the summit. He has ordered increased security sweeps and is restricting human access to critical systems even further." Ji-won sat down heavily in a chair. 3 human workers were questioned for 4 hours yesterday. "They think we are trying to embarrass the alien species in front of the summit delegates." Nari felt anger building in her chest. "So instead of investigating the real problem, they are blaming the humans for their technology failing." "It gets worse," Ji-won continued. "Dr. Zilandra ran a complete diagnostic of all primary systems. According to her quantum analysis computers, everything is functioning at optimal levels. She says the problems we are reporting are either imaginary or caused by human interference with sensitive equipment. But the problems are real," Nari said. "Hana is seeing them in the medical bay. Seojin is seeing them in cargo. I am measuring them in the power grid. How can their computers not detect something that obvious?" "Because," said a new voice from the doorway, "their computers are looking for the wrong kind of problem." They turned to see Kim Minho entering the room. He was a communications officer, one of the few humans trusted with access to the ship's external communication systems. His job was to maintain the old-fashioned radio equipment that served as backup when the main quantum communication array needed maintenance. "I have been monitoring solar activity," Minho continued, closing the door behind him. There is a major solar storm building up along our flight path. It should reach us in about 2 days. Solar storms are normal, Jiwan said. The ship's shielding is designed to handle them. Normal solar storms, yes, Minho replied. But this one is different. The electromagnetic patterns are chaotic, random. Most solar storms follow predictable patterns that the Vorthon shielding technology can easily handle. This storm is throwing out energy in completely random bursts and frequencies. Nari felt pieces clicking together in her mind. The power fluctuations started 3 days ago. If the storm has been building for several days, maybe the ship is already being affected by the outer edges of the electromagnetic field. Exactly, Minho said. The alien shielding systems are designed to deflect energy that follows mathematical patterns. But chaos is different. Random electromagnetic pulses do not follow the rules their computers expect. So their quantum diagnostic systems cannot detect a problem that does not follow logical patterns, Nari said, understanding. The computers are looking for organized system failures, not random interference. And the interference is getting stronger as we get closer to the storm, Minho added. If my calculations are correct, when the main storm front hits us, the ship's power systems will not be able to handle the random electromagnetic pulses. Jiwan leaned forward. What kind of failure are we talking about? Complete power grid collapse, Minho said quietly. Life support, artificial gravity, navigation, communications, everything. The ship's AI will not know how to respond because it cannot predict random patterns. We need to warn them, Nari said, standing up from her console. If you are right, everyone on this ship could die when that storm hits. Warn who? Jiwan asked bitterly. Commander Velthar thinks we are saboteurs. Dr. Zilandra thinks we are too primitive to understand advanced technology. Captain Thexmore would not listen to a human report if it came with a mathematical proof. Besides, Minho added, even if they believed us, what could they do? Their entire technological philosophy is based on predictable patterns and mathematical precision. They do not have any systems designed to handle true chaos. Nari looked at the data scrolling across her screens. The power fluctuations were definitely getting stronger. In 47 minutes, there would be another disruption, slightly more severe than the last one. The pattern was building towards something catastrophic. Then we need to be ready, she said finally. If their technology cannot handle random interference, maybe human intuition can. We need to start preparing for manual control of critical systems. Manual control? Jiwan stared at her. Nari, this ship has thousands of automated systems. No human crew could possibly manage them all manually. Not all of them, Nari agreed, but maybe we can keep the most important ones working. Life support, basic power, emergency systems. If we can keep people alive until the storm passes, that might be enough. Outside the small monitoring room, the great ship continued through space toward its destiny. In the command center, alien officers studied their perfect screens and saw no problems. In the diplomatic quarters, ambassadors prepared speeches about the superiority of advanced civilizations. And, in the forgotten maintenance areas, a small group of overlooked humans began preparing for a crisis that only they could see coming. The solar storm hit the Harmony's edge at 0347 hour ship time, just as Kim Minho had predicted. Nari was awake in the maintenance tunnels when the first wave of chaotic electromagnetic energy struck the ship's shields. The lights did not just flicker this time. They went out completely for 12 seconds, came back at half power, then blazed so brightly that several bulbs exploded in showers of sparks. The ship's gravity fluctuated like a broken elevator, making Nari's stomach lurch as she briefly became weightless before slamming back down against the tunnel floor. Emergency alarms began wailing throughout the ship. In the command center, Captain Thexmore's crystalline body flashed from calm green to alarmed red, as his bridge officers reported system failures cascading through every deck. Impossible, Dr. Zilandra muttered as her screens filled with error messages. The quantum diagnostic systems show all primary functions operating normally, but the secondary systems are reporting massive failures. Run a level 7 diagnostic, the captain ordered. There must be an explanation for these contradictory readings. But the ship's advanced AI was struggling with something it had never encountered before. The electromagnetic pulses from the solar storm were completely random, following no mathematical patterns that the computer could analyze or predict. Every time the AI tried to compensate for one electromagnetic surge, 3 more would hit from different directions with entirely different characteristics. In the diplomatic quarters, Ambassador Kreetol's energy field flickered with confusion as the lights in her suite went out. The environmental controls stopped working, and the temperature began dropping rapidly. She pressed the emergency communication button, but instead of reaching ship security, she heard only static. Jung Minji was in the main kitchen when the food preparation systems began failing. The Axiom quantum food processors, designed to create perfect meals by manipulating matter at the molecular level, started producing inedible combinations as their targeting systems lost synchronization. A machine that had been preparing a delicate Nexari energy soup suddenly began creating what looked like glowing mud. The molecular assemblers are receiving conflicting instructions, explained Grand Engineer Mordak, who had rushed to the kitchen when the alarm started. The tall Vorthon's crystal body pulsed with frustrated orange light. But our computers insist that all command sequences are being transmitted correctly. Minji watched the food processors create increasingly bizarre results as the electromagnetic interference grew stronger. Maybe the problem is not with the commands, she suggested quietly. Maybe the problem is that the machines cannot process commands when they are receiving random interference at the same time. Impossible, Mordak replied without looking at her. Our quantum processors are designed to filter out all forms of interference. Random electromagnetic pulses cannot affect a properly shielded system. As if to prove him wrong, the food processor beside him suddenly exploded in a shower of sparks and half-formed food matter. Minji ducked behind a counter as pieces of the machine scattered across the kitchen. 3 decks below, Nari was crawling through the power distribution tunnels with Bae Tae-hyun, a shuttle pilot who had been grounded for incompetence after questioning the reliability of the ship's navigation systems. They were trying to reach the main power coupling before the cascade failures spread to the life support systems. The AI is making it worse, Tae-hyun said as they squeezed through a particularly narrow section of tunnel. Every time the electromagnetic pulse hits, the computer tries to reroute power to compensate. But the pulses are random, so the computer keeps rerouting power to the wrong systems. It thinks the ship is under attack, Nari replied, consulting her datapad by the light of her headlamp. The random electromagnetic patterns look like weapon signatures to the defense systems, so the AI is trying to isolate damaged areas and switch to combat mode. They reached the main power coupling, a massive hub where dozens of power conduits came together to distribute electricity throughout the ship. Normally, this area would be completely automated, controlled by quantum computers that could balance power loads thousands of times per second. Now, with the AI confused by random electromagnetic interference, the automatic systems were creating dangerous surges and power failures. We need to switch to manual control, Nari said, looking at the intimidating array of switches, dials, and circuit breakers that lined the walls. The AI cannot handle random patterns, but human intuition might be able to. Manual control of the main power grid? Tae-hyun stared at her in disbelief. Nari, there are hundreds of variables to balance. One mistake could shut down life support for entire decks. One mistake by the AI is going to shut down life support for the entire ship, Nari replied. She began studying the control panels, trying to understand the flow patterns she could see in the flickering status lights. Look at the power distribution readouts. The AI keeps trying to balance the load according to its programming, but the random interference makes its calculations wrong every time. Another electromagnetic pulse hit the ship, stronger than the previous ones. Half the lights in the power coupling room went out, and several warning alarms began screaming about critical system failures. On the main status board, Nari could see red indicators spreading across a diagram of the ship like a disease. Deck 12 just lost life support, Tae-hyun said, reading his emergency scanner. The AI shut down environmental controls to compensate for a power surge, but the surge was caused by the AI's own rerouting commands. Nari made her decision. She reached for the master control switch that would disconnect the automatic power management system and switch the entire ship's power grid to manual control. "Get on the communications system," she told Taehyun. "Contact Park Ji-won and tell him to get every human maintenance worker to their emergency stations." The alien command staff will never authorize manual control of primary systems, Taehyun warned. "Then do not tell them," Nari replied and threw the switch. Immediately, every screen in the power coupling room went dark except for the basic manual readouts. Throughout the ship, the constant hum of automated systems fell silent. For a moment, the Harmony's edge drifted through space with only emergency power keeping the most critical systems running. In the command center, Captain Thexmore's body flashed bright red with alarm. "What happened to the primary power systems?" he demanded. "All automated power management has been disconnected," Dr. Zilandra reported, her forearms flying across her control panels. "Someone has switched the entire ship to manual control." "Impossible. No one has the authorization codes for manual override of primary systems." "The override came from the main power coupling on Deck 15, Dr. Zilandra said. "That area is restricted to maintenance personnel only." "The humans," Commander Velthar growled. "I told you they were sabotaging the ship. They have finally shown their true intentions." But in the power coupling room, Nari was not sabotaging anything. She was saving the ship. Her hands moved across the manual controls with growing confidence as she began to feel the rhythm of the ship's power needs. When an electromagnetic pulse hit, instead of trying to fight it with mathematical precision, she rode with it, adjusting power flows to accommodate the chaos rather than resist it. "Life support is stabilizing on Deck 12, Taehyun reported. "Emergency power is holding steady across all decks." "Good," Nari said, sweat beading on her forehead as she balanced dozens of power loads by feel and instinct. "Now contact the other human workers. We need people at every major system junction, ready to take manual control when the automated systems fail." Another massive electromagnetic pulse rocked the ship. This time, instead of causing cascade failures, the ship absorbed the random energy and distributed it harmlessly through systems that were being controlled by human intuition rather than computer logic. For the first time since the storm began, the emergency alarms fell silent. In the command center, the alien officers stared at their displays in confusion. According to their instruments, the ship should be experiencing catastrophic system failures. Instead, all critical systems showed green status lights. "I do not understand," Dr. Zilandra said quietly. "How are the humans maintaining system stability during a random electromagnetic storm without computer assistance?" Captain Thexmore's crystalline body slowly shifted from red to a confused purple. "Perhaps," he said reluctantly, "we should find out." Captain Thexmore found Nari 3 hours later, standing in front of a control panel that covered an entire wall of the main power coupling room. Her hands moved constantly across hundreds of switches and dials, making tiny adjustments as she maintained power flow to 17 different ship sections simultaneously. The captain's crystalline body was glowing a confused mix of purple and yellow as he tried to understand what he was seeing. Behind him, Dr. Zilandra and Grand Engineer Mordak watched in fascination as the human girl performed what should have been an impossible task. "Explain to me what you are doing," Captain Thexmore said, his voice carrying the tone of someone asking a question he was not sure he wanted answered. Nari did not look away from her controls. Her eyes tracked the pattern of lights and gauges that showed her the ship's power needs in real time. "I am keeping everyone alive," she said simply. "But the computational requirements alone," Dr. Zilandra said, stepping forward. "To manually balance power distribution across a ship this size requires processing millions of variables per second. No biological mind should be capable of such calculations." "I am not calculating anything," Nari replied. Another electromagnetic pulse from the solar storm hit the ship, and she immediately adjusted 6 different power flows without consulting any readouts. "I am listening." "Listening?" Grand Engineer Mordak's orange glow deepened with confusion. "To what?" "To the ship." Nari finally glanced at them briefly before returning to her controls. Every system has a rhythm, a personality. When something is wrong, you can feel it in the vibrations, hear it in the electrical hum, see it in the way lights flicker. Your computers try to force the ship to follow mathematical patterns, but during a chaotic electromagnetic storm, mathematics do not work. That is impossible, Dr. Zilandra insisted. All phenomena in the universe follow mathematical principles. Chaos is simply mathematics that we do not yet understand completely. Maybe, Nari said, making another series of quick adjustments as her instruments warned her of an incoming power surge. But understanding chaos and working with it are different things. Your computers need predictable patterns to function. When everything is random, they get confused and start making mistakes. So how are you succeeding where our advanced systems failed? Captain Thexmore asked. Because I am not trying to predict the chaos, Nari explained patiently. I am adapting to it. When an electromagnetic pulse hits, I do not try to calculate the exact response needed. I feel how the ship reacts and adjust accordingly. It is like surfing a wave instead of trying to stop the ocean. Lee Do-yun appeared in the doorway, carrying a toolkit and wearing a satisfied expression. He was a sanitation engineer who had spent the last 3 hours manually controlling the ship's waste processing systems. Life support is stable on all decks, he reported to Nari. Shin-Yura has communications working between all human teams, and An-Subin reports that environmental controls are holding steady. Good, Nari said. What about the food systems? Young Minji has the kitchens running on manual mode. The food is not fancy, but it is edible and safe. The alien quantum food processors are still offline, but our basic preparation methods work fine. Dr. Zilandra stared at Do-hyun in disbelief. You have humans manually controlling life support, environmental systems, food production, and power distribution? That is impossible. The complexity is beyond biological capabilities. No, Do-hyun replied with a slight smile. The complexity is beyond computer capabilities when the input data is completely random. Biological capabilities are different. We do not need to understand every variable to make things work. In the diplomatic quarters, Ambassador Kretal was discovering this truth firsthand. Her environmental controls had failed completely when the storm first hit, leaving her in darkness with rapidly cooling air. She had expected to die within hours. Instead, Han Yunji had appeared at her door with a portable heater, emergency lighting, and a breathing apparatus that maintained proper atmospheric mixture, using purely mechanical systems. The human woman checked on the ambassador every 30 minutes, adjusting equipment and monitoring conditions without any computer assistance. How do you know what atmospheric mixture I need? Kretal asked during one of these visits. I do not, Yunji replied honestly, but I can see when you are comfortable and when you are not. Your energy field changes color when you are having trouble breathing, and your movement patterns change when the temperature is wrong. So I adjust things until you seem comfortable. But that is so primitive, Kretal said, though her tone was more puzzled than insulting. You are not using any scientific measurements or calculations. Scientific measurements do not work when the measuring instruments are broken, Yunji pointed out. But you are still alive and comfortable, so the primitive methods seem to be working. Back in the power coupling room, Supreme Diagnostician Kel Noth had arrived to observe Nari's work. The Zephyrian was considered one of the galaxy's greatest experts in system analysis, capable of processing enormous amounts of data through specialized organs that functioned like biological computers. I have been monitoring the electromagnetic patterns from the storm, Kelnoth announced in his flat, analytical voice. The chaos is increasing exponentially. Within 6 hours, the random interference will be so severe that even manual systems should fail. Then we adapt further, Nari said calmly. Lim Ji-hoon is setting up mechanical backup systems that do not require any electrical controls. Oh Jae-won is preparing manual navigation tools in case we need to change course. We have backups for our backups. You cannot possibly maintain life support for thousands of beings using only mechanical systems, Dr. Zilandra protested. The air recycling alone requires precise chemical balance that can only be achieved through computer control. Park, G1 maintained air recycling on mining stations for 15 years using mechanical systems and chemical test strips, Nari replied. He says the key is checking everything frequently and making small adjustments before problems become serious. Kelnoth processed this information through his analytical organs. You are suggesting that frequent small corrections are more effective than infrequent large corrections calculated by computer. I am saying that when everything is changing randomly, small frequent corrections are the only kind that work, Nari said. Big corrections based on calculations assume that conditions will remain stable long enough for the correction to take effect. In chaos, that assumption is wrong. Another massive electromagnetic pulse hit the ship, the strongest one yet. Throughout the vessel, the few remaining automated systems that the aliens had insisted on keeping online finally failed completely. Emergency lighting flickered and died in several sections. Backup power systems overloaded and shut down. But in the areas controlled by humans, the lights stayed on. Life support continued working. Food preparation continued. Communications remained stable. The human teams adapted to each pulse as it hit, making immediate adjustments based on observation and intuition rather than calculation and prediction. Remarkable, Captain Thexmore said quietly, his crystalline body shifting to a thoughtful blue color. Your species is maintaining basic civilization using methods our computers consider impossible. Not impossible, Nari corrected him. Just different. Your technology is designed for perfect conditions where everything follows predictable rules. Our methods are designed for imperfect conditions where nothing follows predictable rules. And which conditions are more common in the real universe? Asked a new voice from the doorway. They turned to see Ambassador Waylon, an Axiom diplomat, whose insect-like form clicked softly as she approached. Her compound eyes reflected the lights from Nari's control panel as she studied the scene. I have been observing human methods throughout this crisis, Waylon continued. In every case, when our advanced technology failed, human intuition and adaptability succeeded. Perhaps we have been approaching the problem from the wrong direction. Dr. Zilandra's forearms gestured in agitation. You cannot seriously be suggesting that primitive biological methods are superior to advanced quantum technology. I am suggesting, Waylon replied carefully, that different methods are superior under different conditions. In stable, predictable environments, your quantum technology is undoubtedly more efficient, but in chaotic, unpredictable environments, human adaptability appears to be more effective. And the universe, Nari added, making another series of quick adjustments as she felt the ship's power needs shift in response to the continuing storm, is usually more chaotic than we would like to admit. Word spread through the alien crew faster than the electromagnetic pulses from the solar storm. In every section of the ship, beings who had considered humans barely intelligent were discovering that their survival depended on human intuition and adaptability. On Subin was in Environmental Control Section 4 when Chief Medical Officer Tarquin found her. The Nexari doctor's energy field was dim with exhaustion as he approached the human woman who was manually adjusting atmospheric processors using nothing but mechanical gauges and chemical test strips. The patients in Medical Bay 7 are asking, specifically for you, Tarquin said, his translated voice carrying an emotion that might have been embarrassment. They say you are the only one who can keep their life support systems working properly. Subin looked up from the atmospheric processor she was fine-tuning. The Vorthan patients need a higher mineral content in their air supply, she said. The Kafari need lower humidity. The Axiom delegates require trace amounts of methane that your automated systems keep filtering out as contamination. How do you know these requirements without access to our medical databases? Tarquin asked. I watch them, Subin replied simply. When the mineral content is wrong, the Vorthan crystalline structures lose their color. When the humidity is wrong, the Kafari start making clicking sounds with their throat membranes. When the Axiom do not have enough methane, their wing beats become irregular. You are diagnosing medical conditions through observation of behavioral patterns, Tarquin said slowly. That is actually quite sophisticated. It is common sense, Subin corrected. When someone is uncomfortable, they show it. You just have to pay attention. In the cargo bays, Lim Ji-hoon was teaching a group of alien engineers how to operate mechanical loading systems. The sophisticated anti-gravity cargo handlers had failed when the electromagnetic interference became too strong, but the old-fashioned pulleys and hydraulic lifts that humans used as backup systems continued working perfectly. "I do not understand the mathematical principles behind these devices," complained Grand Engineer Mordak, struggling to operate a simple manual crane. "There are no mathematical principles," Ji-hoon explained patiently. "You pull this rope, the weight goes up. You release the rope, the weight goes down. The mechanical advantage is fixed by the size of the pulleys, so you do not need to calculate anything. But without computational control, how do you achieve precise positioning?" asked another alien engineer. "Practice," Ji-hoon said. "You do it many times until you develop a feel for how the machine behaves. Then you can position loads exactly where you want them without measuring anything." "That seems terribly inefficient," Mordak muttered. "Maybe," Ji-hoon agreed. "But when the power goes out and the computers stop working, inefficient methods that work are better than efficient methods that do not work." Han Yoonji was in the communications center with Kim Minho, maintaining contact between human teams, using radio equipment that the aliens had considered obsolete. The quantum communication system had completely failed under the electromagnetic interference, but the simple radio waves continued carrying messages throughout the ship. "Human Team 7 to Central Coordination," crackled a voice through the static. It was Young Minji reporting from the main kitchen. "Food service is stable on all decks. We have switched to basic preparation methods that do not require computer control. The aliens say the food tastes strange, but it is nutritious and safe." "Copy, Team 7, Yoonji responded. "Any problems with supply distribution?" "Negative. The human cargo teams are using manual systems to deliver supplies to all sections. Travel time is longer, but delivery is more reliable than when the automated systems were working," another voice came through the radio network. "Team 12 to Central. This is Bay Taehyun in Shuttle Bay 5. I have been monitoring external conditions. The solar storm is beginning to weaken, but we will need at least 8 more hours before electromagnetic interference drops to safe levels." "Copy, Team 12, Kim Minho replied. "Can you maintain life support in the shuttle bays using manual systems?" "Affirmative. The shuttles themselves are shielded well enough to provide backup life support if needed. I have 6 shuttles ready to serve as emergency shelters if any deck sections lose life support completely." In the diplomatic quarters, Ambassador Kreetol was composing a message that would change galactic politics forever. Using a mechanical writing device provided by the humans, she wrote carefully on actual paper, something she had not done in decades. "To the Galactic Council," she began. "I am writing to recommend immediate inclusion of the human species in all future interstellar cooperation agreements. During the current crisis aboard the Harmony's Edge, human crew members have demonstrated capabilities that our most advanced technology could not match." She paused, thinking about Han Yoonji checking her environmental controls every 30 minutes, never missing a scheduled visit even when electromagnetic pulses made the corridors dangerous to traverse. "The humans possess a form of intelligence that our species have overlooked," she continued writing. "They excel in chaotic situations where predictable patterns do not exist. Their ability to adapt, improvise, and maintain critical systems using intuition rather than calculation may be essential for galactic civilization's long-term survival." Back in the power coupling room, Nari was surrounded by alien officers who had come to observe her work. Captain Thexmore, Dr. Zelandra, Grand Engineer Mordak, Supreme Diagnostician Kelnoth, and a dozen other high-ranking officials watched as she maintained power distribution for the entire ship using methods they could not understand. "I am beginning to see a pattern in your adjustments," Kelnoth said, his analytical organs working furiously to process the data. "You are not responding to the electromagnetic pulses directly. You are responding to the ship's reaction to the pulses." "Exactly," Nari said, pleased that someone was finally understanding. "The electromagnetic interference is random, so you cannot predict it. But the ship's response to the interference follows patterns based on the ship's design and construction. I can predict how the ship will react even when I cannot predict what will cause the reaction. So you are reading the ship's behavior, rather than analyzing the external stimuli, Dr. Zilandra said slowly. The ship tells me what it needs, Nari confirmed. When power demand increases in one section, I can feel it in the control feedback. When a system is overloading, the vibration patterns change. When electrical flow becomes unstable, the humming sound shifts. Pitch. You are treating the ship as a living organism rather than a machine, Captain Thexmore observed. All complex systems are alive in some ways, Nari replied. They have personalities, moods, needs that change over time. Machines that are built well develop their own characteristics and preferences. Good engineers learn to work with those characteristics instead of fighting against them. Park Ji-won appeared in the doorway with a situation report. All human teams are reporting stable conditions, he announced. We have maintained life support, food service, communications, and basic transportation throughout the ship for the past 6 hours using only manual control and mechanical systems. 6 hours, Dr. Zilandra repeated wonderingly. Our quantum computers predicted that manual control of ship systems would fail within 30 minutes under these conditions. Your computers were calculating based on mathematical precision, Park Ji-won explained. But we are not trying to maintain mathematical precision. We are trying to keep people alive and comfortable. Those are different goals that require different methods. And apparently, added Ambassador Waylon, who had been quietly observing the entire time, the second goal is more important than the first when survival is at stake. Another electromagnetic pulse hit the ship, but by now the human teams had developed such efficient coordination that the pulse caused barely a flicker in ship operations. Across dozens of decks, human workers made simultaneous adjustments to their systems, maintaining stability through a network of communication and cooperation that operated faster than any computer. Remarkable, Supreme Diagnostician Kel Noth said, his analytical organs processing the coordination he had just witnessed. You have created a biological network that processes information and responds to changes faster than our quantum communication systems. We call it teamwork, Nari said with a slight smile. Each person handles their own area, but everyone stays in communication. When one person sees a problem developing, they warn the others so everyone can prepare. But how do you coordinate responses without central computational control? Dr. Zilandra asked. Trust, Park Ji-won answered. Each team member knows their job and does it well. When someone calls for help, everyone responds. When someone spots a problem, everyone listens. You do not need a computer to tell you to help. Your teammates. Oh Jae-won entered the room carrying a mechanical navigation device that looked ancient compared to the ship's quantum navigation systems. External sensors show the solar storm is weakening faster than predicted, he reported. We should be able to begin restoring automated systems in about 4 hours. Will the automated systems work properly once the electromagnetic interference stops? Captain Thexmore asked. The hardware should be undamaged, Dr. Zilandra said. But the AI will need time to recalibrate. The rescue of the Stellar Hope took 18 hours of manual navigation that pushed human intuition and alien technology to their absolute limits. Nari stood at the helm of the Harmony's Edge, her hands steady on mechanical controls that had not been used in decades, while Oh Jae-hwan called out course corrections based on star positions he tracked through an old-fashioned telescope. Stellar Hope is directly ahead, distance approximately 50,000 kilometers, Jae-won reported. Their emergency lights are still functioning, so they have some power remaining. Through the main view screen, the alien officers could see the massive passenger liner drifting helplessly in space. Its hull was dark except for scattered emergency lights, and debris floating around the ship suggested that several systems had suffered explosive failures during the storm. Their distress signal is very weak, Kim Minho reported from the communication station. Life support is failing on multiple decks. They estimate 6 hours of air remaining for most passengers. Captain Thexmore's crystalline body glowed with nervous yellow light. Can we dock with them safely using manual control? Docking is the easy part, Nari replied, adjusting the ship's approach vector by feel as she watched the distance readings. The hard part will be keeping life support, working for 15,000 additional people while we repair their systems. Dr. Zilandra was studying the technical specifications of the Stellar Hope on her screens. Their ship uses completely different technology than ours, she reported. Nixari Quantum Environmental Systems, Kafari Power Distribution Networks, Forthan Computational Cores. Even if our automated systems were working, we would not be able to interface with their technology. Then we do it the human way, Park Ji-won said from his position coordinating repair teams. We go aboard their ship, figure out how their systems work, and fix them manually. Impossible, Grand Engineer Mordak protested. Learning to operate, alien technology requires years of study and specialization. No one can master unfamiliar systems in a matter of hours. We are not trying to master their systems, Nari explained as she began the final docking approach. We are trying to keep them working long enough to save lives. Those are different goals. The docking procedure took 3 hours of careful maneuvering. Without computer assistance, Nari had to rely on visual cues and the subtle vibrations she felt through the ship's hull to align the massive vessels perfectly. When the docking clamps finally engaged with a solid mechanical thunk, a cheer went up from the alien officers who had watched the entire process in fascinated silence. Docking successful, O.J. Hwan reported. All seals are secure. We have a stable connection. Immediately, human repair teams began boarding the Stellar Hope carrying basic tools and portable life support equipment. They were led by Lim Ji-hoon, whose experience with mechanical systems made him ideal for understanding unfamiliar technology, and Han Yoonji, whose talent for reading biological needs would help her assess the condition of alien passengers. What they found aboard the passenger liner was chaos. 15,000 beings from 8 different species were crowded into emergency shelters, where failing life support systems struggled to provide adequate air and temperature control. The ship's automated systems had failed so completely that even emergency lighting was sporadic. This is worse than we thought, Yoonji reported through her radio. The Kafari passengers are showing signs of respiratory distress. The Vorthan are losing crystalline stability due to temperature fluctuations. Several axiom have collapsed from atmospheric poisoning. Can you stabilize the life support systems? Nari asked from the Harmony's Edge Command Center. Give us time, Ji-hoon replied. Their environmental controls are based on completely different principles than ours, but the basic physics are the same. Air still needs to circulate, temperature still needs regulation, toxins still need filtering. The quantum processors controlling their life support are completely offline, added Lee Do-yun, who was examining the ship's main computer systems. But there are manual override systems that were never activated because no one knew how to operate them. Over the next several hours, the human teams performed what the alien officers could only describe as miracles. Working with unfamiliar technology and no technical manuals, they restored basic life support throughout the Stellar Hope, using mechanical controls, chemical testing, and pure intuition about how complex systems should function. Jung Minji established food distribution using portable cooking equipment from the Harmony's Edge, preparing basic but nutritious meals for species she had never encountered before. She determined dietary requirements by watching how different aliens reacted to various foods, adjusting recipes until everyone could eat safely. Bae Tae-hyun rigged a power distribution system using parts from both ships, creating a hybrid network that supplied electricity to critical systems using principles that violated every engineering textbook in the galactic database. His system worked not because it followed proper design protocols, but because he understood how electricity wanted to flow and gave it the paths it needed. On-Subin restored atmospheric processing by bypassing the quantum control systems entirely and setting up mechanical regulators that maintained proper air mixture through simple chemical processes. Her methods were primitive by galactic standards, but they kept 15,000 beings breathing while the sophisticated automated systems remained offline. I do not understand how this is possible, Dr. Zilandra said, as she watched status. Reports showing steady improvement in conditions aboard the Stellar Hope. The humans are operating technology they have never seen before, without training or documentation, and achieving better results than our automated systems could provide. They are not operating the technology, Supreme Diagnostician Kelnoth observed. They are persuading it to work. There is a difference. Explain, Captain Thexmore requested. Our approach to technology is based on control, Kelnoth said. We design systems to follow precise instructions and operate within exact parameters. When conditions change beyond those parameters, our systems fail because they cannot adapt. The human approach is based on cooperation, Ambassador Whelan added, having spent hours observing the rescue operation. They treat technology as a partner rather than a tool. They ask the systems what they need instead of telling them what to do. And when the systems cannot communicate their needs through normal interfaces, Dr. Zilandra said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn, the humans find other ways to listen, vibrations, sounds, heat patterns, electrical feedback. Exactly, Nari confirmed from her position overseeing the entire operation. Every system has ways of telling you when something is wrong. You just have to pay attention and respond appropriately. 6 hours after the docking, Kim Minho received a message that brought hope to everyone aboard both ships. The solar storm has passed, he announced. Electromagnetic interference is dropping to normal levels. We can begin restoring automated systems. Should we transfer control back to the ship's AI? Dr. Zilandra asked. Not yet, Nari decided. Let the human teams finish stabilizing the Stellar Hope first. Once we know everyone is safe, we can gradually transition back to automated control. You want to maintain manual control of both ships simultaneously? Grand Engineer Mordak asked, in amazement. We have been maintaining manual control of both ships for the past 6 hours, Park Ji-won pointed out. Adding automated assistance will make things easier, not harder. As the human teams continued their work, representatives from the Stellar Hope began arriving aboard the Harmony's Edge to thank their rescuers. Captain Morteth, a distinguished Vorthan officer whose crystalline body gleamed with grateful gold light, sought out Nari personally. I have commanded starships for 40 years, Captain Morteth said. I have never seen anything like what your teams accomplished today. You saved 15,000 lives using methods that should not have worked. They worked because we needed them to work, Nari replied simply. When people are dying, you do not worry about whether your methods are elegant or sophisticated. You worry about whether they are effective. The Galactic Council will hear about this, Captain Morteth promised. Every species in the galaxy needs to understand what we witnessed today. 3 days later, as both ships approached their destination, with fully restored automated systems running smoothly under human supervision, Captain Thexmore made an official announcement to the entire crew. Effective immediately, he declared. Lee Nari is promoted to Chief Operations Coordinator of the Harmony's Edge. All department heads will report to her for coordination of critical systems during emergency situations. Furthermore, he continued, I am recommending to Galactic Command that all interstellar vessels be required to carry human technical advisors, trained in manual system operation. Today we learned that the most advanced technology in the galaxy is only as reliable as the beings who understand how to work without it. Nari stood on the observation deck, watching the stars wheel slowly past as the great ship continued its journey. Behind her, alien engineers worked alongside human technicians, learning to operate mechanical systems and trust their intuition instead of relying entirely on computer analysis. What are you thinking about? Park Ji-won asked as he joined her at the viewport.